Good afternoon. Can everybody hear okay?
Yes.
We're just going to do some AV checking here first, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Bidders Conference. This is for the Children's Trust Education Technology IT Vendor Pool. And let's see. My name is Cheryl Borg. I'm the Director of IT here at the Children's Trust, and I want to thank you for your time. We have some folks here in the room. This is a public meeting. We will be recording this meeting, and we will eventually be posting it later today on our website, along with this request for information. So it'll be a resource there for future reference. So for those people who couldn't join us, they will have the benefit of our conference this afternoon. I'm going to ask the people who are joining us via Skype if they would please type in their name and their organization, their email, and their telephone number into the chat box so we can record that and keep that information as well. And we'll read off your names here in the room so that way everyone knows who's present. During that time, though, I'll ask the people who are here present to introduce themselves.
Sure. I am Bill Kinires, president of BMK Media Outsourced IT Solutions.
Thank you, Bill.
Jerry Bassett with Unified Technologies.
Jerry?
Gabriel Sanchez, Unified Technologies.
Very good. Thank you very much. Joining me here in the room are members of the IT team. I'll ask them to briefly introduce them.
I'm Mana, testing industry. And Eric Pinson, IT manager.
Okay, very good. We're getting the chat. Perfect. Okay, great. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started just with a brief introduction. Some of you may have some familiarity and know a little bit about the Children's Trust, but just for a matter of introduction, wanted to make you aware that the Children's Trust is actually a dedicated source of revenue established by voter referendum. That was with the purpose of improving the lives of children and families in Miami-Dade County by making strategic investments in their future. Our vision, as you can see here, is a community that works together to provide the essential foundations to enable children to achieve their full potential. So we have our link to our website there, which is, you'll see information there as well about this particular RFQ and connections to other attachments and policies and things like that. Okay, I'm going to ask at this time that if anybody has any questions, that they can hold them, unless it's specific to our content at that time, but I will take a question and answer period at the end. Okay? Talk a little bit about the IT vision here at the Children's Trust and how we've realized that vision over the last few years. Our IT vision, consistent with that, is an as-a-service business model. It promotes innovation by allowing us to be more agile, collaboration, partnership with our solution providers, as well as cost savings and flexibility, so that way we can pay on an as-needed basis for services, as well as allowing us to be accessible from anywhere. Obviously, in this day, that's critically important for all of us to be able to be productive wherever we are. And so we've actually culled down our accessibility points to 6 URLs. Very proud of that. So we can actually access our systems and our applications remotely if and when needed. Okay. We've had 2 other people join the room. I'm going to ask them, just from the standpoint of making sure that everyone knows who's present, if they would introduce themselves. Start over here.
Stephanie Sylvester with the Children's Trust. I'm responsible for programs and IT.
Okay, and sir? Yes,
Abel Herrera, IT Data Solutions, vendor specializing in business intelligence and data integration.
Excellent, thank you so much. Did anyone else join remotely? If anyone else has joined us via Skype, I would ask you to please type into the chat box your name, your organization, your email address, and your phone number. Dane, did you want to share with everyone who's on the chat list?
Yeah, so far we have Anna Lee, James Dumas, Gary, Ocar, and Mario Rodriguez.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on with the IT vision. As we move forward in our organization, we've streamlined many of our processes and moved, as I said, to an infrastructure as solutions and platform as a service model. We've also now started focusing more and more on our data-driven culture. As I shared with you earlier, the Children's Trust is providing services for children here in Miami-Dade County. It's critically important for us to be able to use our information to make those strategic funding decisions. So data and information are organizational assets, and we're moving forward with their utilization pervasive throughout our ecosystem. Continuing to develop as we bring in new data into our systems and looking at ways with which we can integrate those data to enrich the reporting for our users, stakeholders throughout the ecosystem at the Children's Trust, as well as throughout our community. We do some work with providers directly and providing support and assistance to them with their information technology needs. And of course, to be able to continually assess and evaluate the effectiveness of our programs. How is the investment returning as far as the ROI for our investments in our community, and to be able to understand and share the stories of those programs across our ecosystem. How are we impacting our community as we look at things like additional community indicators and those data that enrich our ability to support our community. It becomes, that is a forward strategy of ours as well. Okay, just kind of underlying, excuse me, where the trust is now and our direction moving forward. As you'll see in the RFQ and in our advertising, which has gone out now through our community, we are soliciting for 4 professional service areas. I'll elaborate a little bit about each of them right now as we talk about them. Some of them are areas with which we have existing and current investments and things that we're going to continue to develop as we move forward. Infrastructure as a service, we have, at this point, our devices are managed and supported almost completely off-site. And our infrastructure is, while there's just a very minimal local footprint, all of our devices are managed remotely. Okay. And through, as well, our help desk is managed remotely. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about software as a service. We currently have, and here for this service area, we're also including our website, including the web design, development, hosting, and content. Our services, all of our services are, all of our software is as a service, is completely hosted, maintained, developed outside of our ecosystem. And we currently have an application that provides most of the transactional work for our programs, that as well as I said, the website and our financial systems also hosted and as part of our software as a service ecosystem. Security as a service, this is an area where we're going to be looking forward over the next 5 years of the spender pool to do some additional support for cybersecurity, penetration testing environments, things like that. Okay. Some consulting and guidance there as well. The integrated data repository, data warehouse, business intelligence component. As I said, we are in the process of standing up an integrated data repository. We've got a our data is completely staged in that environment, as well as building out a relational data model. Good afternoon. A relational data model, a dimensional model for us to facilitate analysis across our ecosystem. Ask you to sign in if you would, please. Thank you so much. So this is an area that we're very excited about, that we've been working to develop in the last few years, really, as of late, to begin to roll out some more integrated reporting to our users. Our current application system does provide some reporting to our users that have met some of their transactional needs as well. So this is an enrichment of our current reporting environment. Okay. We can dig a little bit deeper with some of our questions. I know you guys are feverishly writing here, so I'm going to take another pause here to make sure that those people who've joined us have an opportunity to announce themselves. So if you have just joined us, I would ask you to please, in your chat box, to introduce yourselves to us with your name, your organization, your email, and your telephone number. Thank you. Okay, one person I believe has joined us, 2 people by phone. Okay, great. And the gentleman who just joined us, if you would please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Kevin Michael, partner in Visio. We're primarily a managed services provider.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And our other attendees?
So we added a little more from the insurance.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Talk a little bit about the qualifications in order to what we're looking for here. We're looking for people with proven track records. We're a rather unique kind of organization. I talked a little bit about that at the beginning of our presentation. And for those of you who joined us a little bit later into the presentation, subsequent to this presentation, it is being video and audio taped, so it will be available to you as a resource on our website. We are a rather unique organization providing services to children and families in Miami-Dade County. And we would be strongly considering those candidates who have a proven track record, particularly in those areas where services to nonprofits, families, children, educational institutions, and so forth. If you have experience in those areas, that would be helpful. Of course, exemplary client service. We are completely as a service, and we are providing services to others. So the ability to interact directly with our providers is critically important to the success of this organization. That is an expectation. We would ask that you demonstrate that as well in your applications. Must have experienced staff and consulting personnel. One of the areas that we are looking at as well is not only engaging specifically for services, but also potentially also to bid for specific tactical services as needed in a consulting way. So being able to have experienced staff in the selected service areas, we would ask you to demonstrate those in your application as well. Okay. Talk a little bit more also about our qualifications, particularly this is in my, for our software as a service and IDR applicants. Those 2 areas, we do have organizational data system requirements, and those are transparent there. As I indicated to you, the continuing development of our integrated data repository requires us to bring those data from other systems into our system, and therefore the ability to connect to that integrated data repository via secure protocol, web service API, and so forth. We will be asking for those people who are providing software services to us, it will be a requirement of all of our contracts that we get those data into our systems. Okay. Of course, being FERPA and HIPAA compliant, critically important. We talked about that earlier as far as providing services to students, we also, to children rather, as well as those school health-based services that we provide in our community as well. All right. We require that all servers are located within the continental United States. It's a requirement. Okay. And of course, user-friendly interface accessible through mobile devices. it seems like something we should have to say, but in our day and time, people are on the move constantly, and we need to make sure that not only are people out in the field, the contract managers and providers out in the field, we want to make sure that they have access to all of the information that they need in order to service our providers, as well as our providers, stakeholders, and community members should be able to contact us from any place. Did you have a quick question? Yes, sir.
Yes, Abel, IT Data Solutions. That second to last bullet point where it says house all data servers located in the continental United States.
Yes.
You said earlier on all your servers are managed off-site. Is the assumption when we're responding to this to plan for infrastructure as well, specifically to software as a service, to build the stage, the development, and the test environment, and production environments as well?
The hosting and so forth, yes.
So all that needs to be included. So if we're gonna build out the data warehouse, if you will, or
Okay.
operational data store, whatever
Mhm.
method we come to an agreement with,
Yes,
we have to also take into consideration housing that server somewhere. It's not gonna be hosted in your
that's
data
correct.
center.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
That's absolutely
Thank
right.
you.
We don't have a
I
data
was just
center.
gonna say, yes, we delivered.
We got rid of our data center. We have a branch cache with some virtual machines, and it has some network files that we're looking to get rid of by the end of this calendar year, and we will only have branch cache to host AD and print servers and maybe a few other infrastructure servers. The idea is that as a service model, somebody else will be responsible for the entire architecture, security, maintenance, and uptime of the solution. And we can go from having IT be a CapEx approach to budgeting to an OpEx approach to budgeting, which makes it easier to get the IT budget renewed every year.
And I have a follow-up to that.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take advantage of this meeting. When you, being a middleware to
Mhm.
the ETL process, if you will, the extract, transform, and load,
Yes,
your application servers where our sources are, and eventually the end, the target, if you will,
yes,
and the reports and things like that, as far as talking to and interacting with those other
Mhm.
servers, you guys will help us facilitate,
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
because I see that as a risk.
Understood, I understand, and, the way our infrastructure is being designed, the collaboration between some of our vendors would be a requirement of successful data.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay? All right, I think that was important from a clarification perspective, and we'll go ahead and move on, and then we'll have plenty of time. We've allotted a significant amount of time this afternoon, to allow people to ask the appropriate questions so they can prepare, and make appropriate decisions. So, eligible applicants. Vendors must apply. They must apply to provide a minimum of one unique service. However, they may apply in each of the 4 categories. You may apply for acknowledgement. For example, if you were in software as a service, you might have a desire to indicate your interest in the web component of that, as well as a particular software, the types of software that you use. Okay? Infrastructure managed services, the security as a service, and then the IGR component as well, business intelligence part of the platform. Any applicant who's not currently registered in the state of Florida must submit a ticket with our help desk, so that way we can get you through the process of getting those credentials aligned, and you will need to include the business name, the address, the FEI number, and allow time for that. I encourage you to allow a couple of days, so that way you don't find yourself on the last day. I'm sure you won't, right? But if you find yourself close to the submission date, I'd like to make sure that we don't have any challenges around meeting your needs there. Okay?
So just one clarification point on here is that our system automatically verifies that whether or not you're a valid entity in the state of Florida. So we know that you could be there are IT companies that we do business with that are not registered in the state of Florida. And, for that purpose is the reason why you need to submit, a ticket so that we can put it in the back end. Otherwise, the system will reject you and you will not be able to move forward.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on in. And what are we looking for? I'm gonna hit the target. Through the solicitation, the trust is seeking to learn about your organization's structure. We want to know your capabilities, your experience, your proposed fees, and a review of the references of your clients. Be sure to include any previous work that you have created for the Children's Trust. Just make reference to that in your application. Okay? We will ask you about the work style and the management of your work. So your business processes, project management. Okay. Some critical dates. Just I'll mention a few others. I have another slide there of some other timelines. They're all posted also on our website associated to our RFQ. But first date I think that we need to share is obviously we released it on February 1st, this last Friday, and selected applicants will be approved, will be presented for approval to our board of directors on May 20th. It is at that point where we may begin a solicitation process for bids, if there were a need immediately for a particular set of services. Now, vendor pools may last up to 5 years. At the end of the 3rd year, we would review the vendor pool to make sure that we had sufficiency for the next 2 years. If that is not true, we would go ahead and resolicit at that point. Yes.
Another question, Abel Herrera, IT Data Solutions. In this vendor pool, and very specifically to the data integration portion, are you looking for the team more as a staff augmentation or to build a solution end to end? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because I've been on projects where we have multiple teams doing and we have different methodologies to follow. So I just want to make sure I understand, so when we submit our proposals,
Correct.
We know if it's just adding bodies, resources, or doing the solution end to end.
Okay. So at the time of need, there would be an articulation of what that need is. The possibility could exist for implementing possibilities within the ecosystem, right? We currently have a solution in place that we're using. Should we need to augment that with the skills of business process and the So I don't know that I can specifically answer your question.
No, that was perfect, thank you.
Okay. Did you need to add a question?
No, I think that's sufficient. We can do all of participants except Cheryl.
I think so. There you go. Thank you. Okay, great. More about the timeline then, I guess. We'll just go ahead and go over that quickly. The last day to submit any written questions or inquiries regarding this particular solicitation is the 20th of February, and we will respond, complete the responses to all of those questions by February 22nd. The application submission deadline is March 1st, 2019 at 4:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Once it turns 5 o'clock, we will not be accepting any more submissions. Okay, we will not be able to submit. Okay. Application review period will occur shortly thereafter, and we will debrief on those applications internally at that point. And interviews with candidates just would be scheduled between the days of April 3rd and April 5th. And then we will be making the recommendation. Applications would be selected on April 19th. That will be the end of the cone of silence at that point. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so interview with final candidates, so just want everybody to understand that this these meetings will be publicly noticed, which means that somebody that is also applying for the same services that you're wanting to apply for can attend your meeting and listen to what you're saying, and depending on where they are in the interview cycle, could use your response to enhance their response. So just want to make sure that everybody's aware of this, that this is a publicly noticed meeting. And for candidates that can't be in person, we will be allowing a conference call.
Thank you. At the end of the code of silence, we will be making our recommendations to our board of directors. As I indicated earlier, the board of directors will review our recommendations on May 20th. Okay. I'm not sure I'm the only one in the room who remembers this show, but the code of silence is in place now. So the information that we're providing is being done so in a public forum. And we'll make that information posted on our website as well. It lasts for the entire time of the solicitation. And once the recommendations are announced on April 19th, then the code of silence will be released. Okay?
So I can add, Chair, that in the system, when you start completing your application, there's a way to submit questions in a manner that makes you can respond to them, and then every applicant gets to see question one and what the response was. That's what's, any public communication is allowed with the code of silence. It's just individual, private communications are not allowed.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. All right. We'll talk a little bit about the actual online application process. Give you some guidance on that. All applications to the IT vendor pool will be submitted through our trustcentral.org platform. All right. Any questions about the contents of the RFQ, as Eric just mentioned, must be submitted through that portal. And all the responses will be posted on the solicitations main page in order for everybody to see the questions and the answers. Okay? Any technical questions that you have regarding the application, you're to direct to our help desk, the help desk at the Children's Trust. And our SLA on the return for those technical questions is up to 2 business days. Okay? As I indicated to you earlier, particularly if you need to make sure that your organization is registered to allow those 2 business days. Questions about the contents of the RFQ cannot be answered by any of the help desk staff. Okay? Everything is handled through services. Okay? Application review process. Each application will receive a substantive review score, and that will be based on the rating criteria identified in the RFQ itself. We'll have that information. After the selection committee has selected the successful candidates, a resolution will be brought to our board, and the approval of the vendor pool will occur at that time. Okay? So the review process is designed to select most qualified candidates in each service area. You may be selected for one or more of those service areas that you apply for. If you are selected for one area, doesn't mean you wouldn't be selected for another, or vice versa, right? Okay, so they're done independently with you. We're also bringing in individuals from the community, trained individuals who are experts in our field. Okay. Once admitted to the vendor pool, just so you know how it kind of operates after that, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Once the pool is established, projects will be put out to bid. Okay. Among the pre-qualified vendors, those that are deemed to qualify for a particular service will be contacted via bid. The vendors will be called upon on an annual or per project basis, depending on our needs. And bid responses should include things like project estimates, concepts, narratives, things. Okay? Admission to the vendor pool is not a guarantee that we will have work for you. It is a service pool for us to contact should those needs arise. All right? And the trust reserves the right to competitively seek bids outside of the vendor pool if we see that there's not sufficiency within the pool, or if vendors become unavailable for some reason, or if there is poor performance during the time of the vendor. Okay. We also reserve the right to competitive outside of the vendor. Okay. I'm going to actually open it up to questions at this time. I think we've pretty much gone through kind of an overview of what you should expect in the process and how you can become an applicant for the pool itself. So I will entertain questions. For those of you who are on the phone or have Skype connections, you can type them in your chat box and I'll take them one at a time. So I'll start in the room and then we'll kind of shift back and forth between the room and the chat box to make sure we're treating folks fairly. So questions?
So Jerry Bassett with Unified Technologies. So the application is to become part of the pool.
Yes.
We're not necessarily quoting out specific equipment or, we're giving our fees of, hey, we're charge X amount for managing a network device or whatever. That's the kind of
Yes.
application that we're submitting to.
Yes, so we've also augmented the RFQ with a listing of our current devices and our infrastructure, what that consists of. So for those people who might be doing infrastructure as a service or help desk or those kinds of services, they might have a better idea of the size and shape of our ecosystem. That might be helpful. The same thing would be true for our IDR, our integrated data repository. We've got a IDR architecture drawing there as well, so we'll kind of see how the platform is and where we are in the development of that process. So that's some of the information that would be available to you. In the content areas also, as you open up the RFQ, you'll see a description of our current ecosystem. We don't necessarily have projected work there as of yet, but we wanted to give everyone the same understanding of what our current ecosystem is. So we would ask that you, based on the way that you provide services, respond, as well as how you price and what your expectations would be based on engagement.
Maybe we should just kind of like walk through holistically how our ecosystem looks.
Sure.
Might be a little bit helpful.
Sure.
So today we have managed services and infrastructure as a service through TriBridge, and they, as I mentioned before, manage or branch cache or network or infrastructure or access. And if we have a help desk ticket that's related to our infrastructure or endpoints, and our endpoints are servers, Windows servers, Mac laptops, Windows laptop. We don't have any Linux servers anymore, no Linux servers. And they have a help desk that responds with an SLA to our issues, and they remediate most of the issues remotely, so they don't have a person on site. We went with this model to reduce the cost. So that's one thing. Then our core business. So just as a background, the Children's Trust is a local taxing authority, which means that we take $500,000 of everybody's property tax and fund programs that provide services to improve the lives of children and family in Miami-Dade. We have a dedicated revenue source, unlike other entities that may or may not have the same revenue source year to year. And so our job is to give away money in the most judicious way possible, and then ensure that those monies are being spent with fidelity. And we have a system called Trust Central, that's software as a service that has been customized to our needs, that manages about 80 to 90% of the business processes associated with giving away money. And what are the business processes associated with giving away money? We have a solicitation where, like what you're doing, where we say, hey, we want to buy these services. People say, we can provide those services. We say yes or no. We have a contracting module where we say, okay, you said you could provide these services. This is what we're contracting you to provide. And then based on the contract, we have baseline in, that we track to say whether or not you're meeting your contractual obligations. And then you're also able to submit your invoices for expenses incurred. We pay cost reimbursement, so you must incur the expense, and then we will reimburse you. And from that data is collected, and then we have a program metrics module that allows us to do analysis as to whether or not you're meeting expectations, you're exceeding expectations, you're not meeting expectations, and how far you are from meeting expectations. That's our core business process, and that's a software as a service. We have integrated data repository that we are putting in the data from Trust Central and from other systems, both legacy and current and future data into that, and that's currently being built out. We have GP as a service. Great Plains is our accounting system that keeps track of our budget. Budget's about $150 million, and that again is as a service. And in addition to GP as a service, we have an add-on called Core Integrator, which allows us to automate our processes for requests to spend money. And then we have a website. Our website, thechildrenstrust.org, is also a hosted service. It's designed and hosted in Drupal. It has a few functionality, but for the most part, it's a content management system. And then we also have a system, another website called the Miami Heart Gallery, where children in the foster care system that want to be adopted are placed on this website, and people can go to the website and read up about the child, and then determine whether or not they want to adopt the child. So that is our ecosystem in a summary. There's a few edge case things that I haven't covered, but for the most part, that's what you really need to understand when applying for our solution for our vendor pool. As Cheryl says, our procurement process is multi-step. So this is the first step to just say, do we think that this vendor has what it takes to provide the services? We will then take our vendor pool recommendation to the board. Once we get approval for the vendor pool, we have a bid process. The good thing with the bid process is that that is not subject to CONA silence or publicly noticed meetings. We went this route because it is very awkward to solicit IT services without being able to talk to your IT vendor. And then once people submit their bid, we will then determine through conversations and so forth which vendor best meets our needs.
So in the case of your infrastructure, let's say, the licenses, for example, you have Meraki infrastructure. So you guys already licensed for that, or we have to take that in consideration, or is that something, or we should say, hey, look, we're gonna charge X amount to manage that device, licenses are separate?
No, you have to take in consideration license. The only license that we ourselves pay for is the Microsoft Enterprise license. All other licenses associated with any software solution is a vendor's responsibility.
Hardware or software solutions?
Hardware, yes, is a vendor's responsibility.
Do you have backup?
Yes, backup is in our is part of our enterprise license.
From Microsoft?
Yes. The only backup that we have is our file system that we're getting rid of. we have a file system, we've locked it down, you can only read from it, you can't write to it. Most of our file storage is in SharePoint, which already has a backup system that, Microsoft provides. Our software as a service, vendors, they're responsible for backing up their systems themselves.
Did we have any questions through the chat? So
No.
kind of alternate there? No? Okay. Did someone else join the call? Hadn't announced themselves? If so, I would ask you to please include your name, your organization, your email, and your phone number, please, in the chat box. And if you are connected to us remotely and you have questions, please go ahead and submit them through the IM, through the instant messenger. And here, yes, go ahead.
Bill Skinner, BMK Media Outsourced IT Solutions. Are you able to provide with us any sort of SLA expectations or an outline for the various types of services, particularly, I guess, for managed services?
We actually asked that in the solicitation for you to provide
Okay.
what your expectations are.
But you don't have like minimum standards that you publish, you want us to just guide you with what we would want you to have?
I would like you to respond.
Not a problem.
Okay. Did you want to provide something more specific? I mean, we solicited that.
No, that's pretty much.
Okay.
Is help desk required 24/7?
So, at this point, it's not a 24/7 operation from that perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. And so you can provide, pricing and so forth based on your services for a 24/7 operation and for a kind of a standard workday, Monday through Friday, kind of 12-hour day maybe, range would work. We have, just because of our standard work hours, although they're not always standard, we do have a range of, people working different hours. Some of our staff come in very early, and some stay late into the evening. But, pricing wise, I would prefer if we could get this for more than one option. Because just thinking about this from a 5-year perspective.
And English speaking only?
Yes. We conduct our business, we conduct all business in English only.
Other questions? Sure.
Jerry Bassett from Unified. On the security as a service, can we get more detail what you're expecting? Because one thing is penetration testing, endpoint protection, email security, all that stuff. Can we get more guidelines there, what you guys are expecting? Because it's kind of hard to price out,
It's included some in the RFQ itself. We listed out what the kinds of services that we might be getting and preparing for in the future, including cybersecurity, including penetration testing, including consultative services regarding email and internet exposure and things like that. So I don't have a specific set of requirements. Did you want to ask?
Yeah, I think we are also looking to fortify our security approach. So that piece of our RFP is a little bit more nebulous than the other pieces of our RFP, because the last time we did this, we were very nebulous with a number of things, and our current vendors have been very helpful in streamlining and standardizing our ecosystem so that it's easier to articulate. So we're looking for a way to ensure that the vendors as a service do have the level of security that they say they have, that our staff understands the appropriate security protocols and don't inadvertently create holes in our security perimeter, and that we are being proactive with the latest security measures within reason.
We, from the perspective of data sensitivity, We deal with some very sensitive data here. So, given the constantly evolving ecosystem around data security and information security, there may be some opportunities to partner with vendors in this area to help us kind of inform an ongoing strategy around cybersecurity. Yes,
Abel Her, IT Data Solutions. Kind of going back to the data integration piece.
Sure.
And to that point, and you said earlier, we have to manage our infrastructure. Obviously, that's not a skill set that we have. And I think it's a risk for the Children's Trust to have a software integrator now managed. So we're going to have to get a third party to be part of our team. Yeah, please. You kind of understand where I'm kind of going with this.
So a lot of the infrastructure that's in place for the current systems we either operate or use is managed by like cloud providers, right? So,
TriBridge is
so some of them are just hosted out of Amazon. So the management of it is like really simple. So we need another database. We're not going to go try to have a person who can manage a set of hosts or virtual machines or anything like that. You just spin on another database from Amazon. Right. So if the hosting of the services and the management of services is done by somebody else, that's completely okay. As long as it's not we don't want to be in the business of managing servers. And
understood, but the whole topography and when you're starting to integrate, it gets a little bit complicated, and I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that potential risk.
Yes. So we did IDR as a service as well. We already currently have IDR as a service, which means that our current vendor has built out our IDR in a particular way, and has put in the necessary protocols to ensure that we are both HIPAA and FERPA compliant, because we deal with children's data, and we fund school-based health clinics, so we have medical records as well. And the idea is, as the IDR is built out, we're going to get to a point where we're going to have feeds, daily feeds that are coming in. We have a staging area where the data is in, and then it gets moved into our IDR, and the IDR is protected. So we're expecting that the vendor is responsible for securing the staging area and securing the IDR and managing it. The IDR is probably the only as-a-service solution that we have that's slightly different in that we own the IDR. So most as-a-service is your leasing, but we own the IDR, so if we were to change vendor, we would be expecting that the new vendor would take the existing IDR, not go build a new one. Unlike if we did GP as a service, if we change vendor, you just spin up a new GP instance and transfer the data. So our IDR belongs to us, but it's being managed as a service on our behalf.
Understood. I did read, Abel Her IT Data Solutions, I did read a follow-up question that you guys are using a Postgres to do your ETL. Are you guys opposed to using other more current industry standard vendors, if you will, tools, software tools? I'm sorry.
Not for the ETL. So the relational and dimensional component of the IDR right now is on a PostgreSQL and Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL instance. The ETL is we're managing different things. We're not opposed to any particular ETL tools or
the way we look at it is scalability and ease of use, right? So that's what we bring to all our clients, and I want to just make sure that you guys aren't, I don't want to suggest something that you're completely opposed. So I just want to understand if you already have certain tools selected, or the database backends.
We're not married to a particular ETL tool.
So you're open to suggestions?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
one
Come here and then come back.
Yeah, Kevin Michael, and you may have addressed this earlier. I noticed that you had email-only help desk, is that
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
All right, just wanted to make sure that what you're looking to continue with, or
Yes.
want life support?
Email only.
Uh,
With some,
so,
so the process should be email and then, live support if needed.
Right.
So not that everything, if it's more than 2 volleys, then there needs to be a live person addressing the solution.
and I would just caveat that in addition to what Stephanie said, to obviously, depending on the nature of the issue and the impact on the ecosystem, obviously those things, the escalation point could be triggered rather quickly. So, the users will interact with the help desk, through email or the process. Yes, coming back here, I think.
On
there's
the,
another question. Mhm.
On the infrastructure side,
Yes,
so you're expecting, you currently have servers, someone's managing servers for you. Are we taking ownership of that existing hardware, or is it that we're providing our own hardware? And then moving your servers over, your services over? How about the switches, you're keeping those are being owned by you, so we just, if anything, we have to license them again?
changing the switches soon.
So you're changing them,
We're.
so that's not part of infrastructure?
Yes, it's part of infrastructure. I don't know that we know the answer to that question. That would be, we would have to look to our vendor, our current vendor, to answer that question for us. Because right now, the branch cache is owned by them.
Yeah, so that's the question, do you want us to bring our own equipment in here, or do you guys currently own that equipment?
We don't own, we own the switches,
You own the switches only,
we only own the switches, they own the branch cache.
so
And they
our
own-
proposal,
They own the branch cache and they own the firewall.
okay,
So if I may, I might clarify for services and infrastructure a little bit. Part of what we're striving to, as you notice, we all bring our laptops here. We used to have a mix of desktops and laptops. Right now, every person at the staff of Children's Trust has this laptop on. As Cheryl mentioned at the beginning, we're trying to get down to a very limited number of URLs people have to remember in order to be able to get their work done. Right now, we're down to about 6 or 7, depending on how you count them. But it's a very manageable number, right? And most of the hosted or managed services we have, you have no restriction. You can access them from your phone, from your tablet, from your trust assigned laptop, or from your home computer. Or there's a very limited number of processes that require access to this physical location. So if this were to go down, we lose the access point on the wireless side, or the firewall goes down, until 99% of the work can continue. There's a very selected number of people who requires resources that are right now physically here. So we want to continue that trend and make it so all the services are basically the endpoint is what you need to secure, and the user, because that user could be coming at our data from multiple devices. So we have to put security has to be in place regardless of where the user is coming from. So it cannot be centered around this building, or people who are sitting here, because most of the time we're trying to have people not sitting here, because they need to be interacting with the community or the providers and all of that. So currently there's a couple of physical servers installed in this building. One of them is owned by the the managed services company. The other one is an older server that we have there that is probably about five years old or so. So it's probably not a really good idea to keep using that one long term. The only services that we have not been able to move out of here is the Active Directory instance. But we're already hosted, it's being synchronized with the Azure AD, right? So if somebody is able to do that full migration and we don't need AD anymore here, then with more power, we don't have to keep it. As Stephanie said, in those servers we also have a number of file shares. that have been locked down and in read-only mode, just to allow people access to all the files. So once we get rid of that, then that would also be, so there might be a need to have something here to do DNS, DHCP, maybe AD still needs to be there. We do the synchronization with Office 365 or things of that nature. But the services are to be centered around the people or the endpoints more than anything else. If that helps.
So not worry about the server infrastructure.
Right, you would have to manage it or own it or
Just
bring
manage
it in.
it.
Right, but we're not.
But at this point, in other words, let's say you're saying, okay, maybe we might retire this, maybe we don't need this, maybe we need to bring a server. Do I need to include those assumptions in my application?
Yes, I think whenever, if you have made some assumptions, it's very helpful to clearly lay out your assumption, because some of the people reviewing might not have the level of technical knowledge to understand the intricacies of the infrastructure. We have both deep technical knowledge people, but we also have people from a business prospect that also needs to say, yeah, sounds like these people, and when they do an interview, I feel like I can work with them.
Do you feel as if your question was answered?
Kind of. I guess maybe it's just me. I'm just trying, 'cause I'm
You have to understand, it's a two-step process, right?
okay.
So this step is less about being exact on the pricing.
Right.
It's impossible for you to be exact on the pricing on this step. This is, we want you to give us a ballpark of what your pricing is, a range. You're gonna become exact on your pricing when we release the bid.
Okay.
And,
That makes sense.
and the specifications around that
Will be on the
requirement
bid.
will be specific to that bid, right?
Got it.
So I think, if you think about it more from the standpoint of evaluating the services that you provide and the competitiveness of your pricing and the comparability of your work, right, to our ecosystem, I think that will take you a long way in responding.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
To piggyback off that, Able or IT Data Solutions, are you guys okay with time and material, or are you guys more focused on a fixed bid approach? Main reason why I'm saying it is in these projects, we'll have an integration architect, maybe a database architect, some leads, some developers, some business analysts, QA, so on and so forth. So we can put the rate
Yes.
that we're billing for that, and then obviously when we understand the scope, we will then drill down and say, you just need two developers, 5 report writers, whatever the case may be. That's acceptable in our,
Yes.
as opposed to giving you, $1, $2, $3 million, just a lump sum.
Yeah, and I think you'll see in the way that the question is asked, we ask for proposed pricing based on how you deliver your service.
Perfect.
So I think that hope that's clear. If not, please feel free to follow up with a question. I'll answer it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? Do we have questions from our online participants?
Actually, I do have one more question.
Certainly.
So outside of sort of network server infrastructure, you mentioned that the current provider does provide some on-site support. Is that correct? No,
Rarely.
not whatsoever.
Rarely.
Rarely. So
Rarely.
that's
We
being
try
handled
to,
by internal team currently?
I'm
Is
sorry.
that being handled by your internal team currently?
I would say 90% of our services provided are done remotely by our service provider. Obviously, there are some tactical things that have to be handled by an internal team. If your monitor stops working, nobody remote's gonna be able to help you with that, right? I would say somewhere in the 80 to 90% range, and with a very heavy emphasis on prompt to remote service.
And then would there be any interest perhaps in even at this stage to include some type of on-site support? That's something you just want to see. If that's part of our traditional service delivery model.
Sure. If you want to put that on there, that's fine.
If that's part of your service model, I would present it. It's not something that we currently have. Additional questions?
On the SaaS,
Uh-huh.
Jerry Bassett from Unified again. So on the SaaS, you guys have the licenses for Microsoft, Azure. On the AWS side, you guys are paying for that as well, or is the vendor paying for that?
AWS, the vendors paying for that.
So anything outside Microsoft it's gonna be our responsibility.
Exactly. We have Enterprise E5 license. I guess we should mention that on our telecommunication, we're in the process of converting our telecommunication from physical phones to Skype for business. And so that's all rolled up into our E5 license.
Just to clarify, we used to license through an enterprise agreement, like Windows Server licenses and SQL Server license, all of that. We're removing that on this upcoming renewal. We're only going to have the Microsoft 365 that includes the Windows OS for desktops and laptops. The Office 365, all of that, Skype for Business, the whole thing. But no server licenses or SQL Server licenses are owned by this. So I'm expected to be handle the licensing or like whatever the vendor needs to put in place to manage that space.
Dave Lawler, IT Data Solutions. As a system integrator, we'll finish this if we're selected, obviously,
Sure.
and we'll put this, or whoever does that. Are we expected to support, or are you going to have another vendor do the support? Do we have to take that into consideration? Do we build out an active, passive PR solution? There's just so much when it comes to middleware, so.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't think I have enough time in the 30-something days left to be able to.
Understood. I think you can make certain assumptions, right? And, but for the most part, the way depending on the tactical development, right? So if you're coming in, let's say we were in need of a specific end-to-end ETL or integration between a new source system and our target IDRs, right? So, it may be very targeted, consulting-based ETL build, right? And I think as we bid that process out, we would need to look very closely at what type of support we need for that ongoing component, right?
It's boxing that
And-
scope.
Yeah, I understand, and depending on what the need is, I'm gonna have to be a little
Right,
bit vague in
vague,
the
you have to.
response, right?
And so I guess my perspective, and for anybody else that's a system integrator is probably thinking this as
Sure.
well, and that's why I want to say it for everybody,
Mhm.
is the response back to you may be a little vague because how big do we make this? And like you said, this is just to qualify it into the pool, so don't put
Sure,
that much.
sure.
I don't know.
So somebody gave an analogy yesterday, you were talking to me yesterday, and I thought it was really good. So you could come from an approach of saying, it's raining outside, and the rain is the solicitation, and you could come from an approach of either putting a raincoat on, but then only a few you restrict how many people can wear that raincoat because there's a size limitation. Or you could use an umbrella where there's no size limitation, more people can use it. And you should be approaching your responses for this thing from an umbrella standpoint, which is, what is it that you can do, how you can do it, maybe one or two examples, a lot of reference of what you've done to date, what were the impact for what you've done to date, and how you see based on what you've read or based on how you understand our environment, how you can help us moving forward. That's the umbrella. And the bid process, you will then have to come with the raincoat approach, which is very specific. What is it going to do? What are you going to give us? What's the SLA? What is it going to cost? Are you going to bill us a time and material or fixed price? At this point in time, if you have fixed price and time and material, let us know. If you just have fixed price, let us know. If you only have time and material, let us know. Those are the kinds of things that we're wanting to understand. We don't want to get into, what we're trying to do is we don't want to get to a point where we've created a vendor pool and we haven't done an appropriate vetting and then the people in the vendor pool are unable to provide the services we require at the price point that we can afford. So we do need to do a first pass to say, hey, what are you? I mean, like, are you selling Maseratis or are you selling VWs? Because there's a difference, right? So if you're selling Maseratis, we're probably not your customer. But if you're selling VWs, maybe if you're going on like, maybe BMW, we might consider it, depending, maybe the low class, the whatever the cheapest BMW is, we might consider it. But that's about it, right? So that's where we are. And so we want to get that weeded out first pass.
I like the analogy.
Thanks.
Are there any questions from our online participants?
I'm gonna type in to see if anybody.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure we don't leave anybody out. Yeah,
Abel Herr, IT Data Solutions. I heard a lot of Microsoft, and then you got rid of Linux. Are you guys opposed to other outside of Microsoft products? Are you opposed to that?
In essence, we really don't want to be concerned with what you're using to run it. So I'll give you a quick example. The website currently, I'm pretty sure it's hosted on a Linux virtual machine out of Azure, is it Amazon? I don't even know. So that's where we are now. That we don't. That's not important. The database backend is probably MySQL database, but we don't really know. The IDR is just the target, like where things are. That's where we need to make that decision and kind of like stick with it. But we're not like totally to moving anything particular. But all the middleware, as you say, we're going to be connecting to systems that are multiple platforms, right? So the source data, we're talking about BI and integration, is going to be very diverse. You're going to find data sources that are just flat files that are coming in, and we're going to find data sources. Relational connections, of course. And web services and relational connections and all sorts of things. So it's not, we just don't want to be concerned with the specifics of what OS, what database version, what's like, thank you.
No, that was.
Jerry Bassett here, and just to make sure, so I went to the portal, I downloaded the RFQ, the design on an Excel sheet. That's all that's out there right now, or am I missing something?
resource-wise, just the design, that's the devices, right? And then the IDR, which is the architecture, and the RFQ itself. What you'll see later on today is this video. And I believe there might be some instruction there on how to apply it. Other than that, it's where all the resources will go. When there are questions and answers, they'll be posted there as well. The line open for a few more minutes, just in case. I want to make sure everyone has a sufficient opportunity to get their questions addressed.
Question on the Jerry Bassett Unified on the wireless access points. Are those Meraki as well?
They're Meraki, right?
They are Meraki.
The switches are going to be Meraki.
couple more minutes just to give you guys a few more minutes and, if not, we'll go and complete the conference. Well, I'm going to say thank you very much to everybody for your participation today in the Leaders Conference for the IT vendor pool. We are yearly anticipating your responses, new applications, and remind you that during the cone of silence, we can respond to your questions through our website only. And the closing date for your questions is February 20th. Okay? And the solicitation close date is March 1st, as I said earlier, at 4:59 p.m. Eastern Time. All right? Thank you all so much for participation.